So let's start here in Vital, and I'm just gonna draw in a D. Now we can start with the default preset. And at first we're gonna be making a downer, but it's gonna be a bit more complex than a simple subdrop. So let's change this to a sine wave and use LFO1 to control the pitch. Since we're gonna be using multiple oscillators for this, we're gonna be using the global pitch setting. Set LFO1 to the global voice transpose. And let's just start with the setting. So let's set this to envelope mode, 2 bars long. Now we want to give this some more movement, so let's go to the effects section and enable the distortion. Let's use LFO2 on the drive. And I want to change the frequency of LFO2 depending on LFO1. So let's set this to seconds. So in the matrix over here, we can set LFO1 to the frequency of LFO2. So let's go into oscillator 2, give these 2 or 3 voices, and also enable the smear mode. Let's listen to oscillator 2 on its own. So I actually want to use LFO1 to modulate the spectral morph here. I'll listen to both of them together. Let's actually add some compression, but decrease the highs here. And maybe add a filter, so the full spectrum of the sound only comes in at the end of the second bar. Also add an EQ to sort of increase this effect. Give the master envelope a bit of a tag. That's fine for now, so let's just duplicate this and go back to our initialized preset. Now we're going to make a really high-pitched riser. So let's actually start with a sine wave here as well. Pitch this up a few octaves. So again, set LFO1 to the global pitch. Envelope mode, 2 bars. Pitch this up even further. A few voices. Turn the detune down. And I want this to have some sort of stuttery effect. We're going to use LFO2 and use it on the volume of this. Also enable filter 1 and cut some of the highs. And again, I want the frequency of LFO2 to be modulated by LFO1. So let's again set this to seconds. Go to our matrix and set LFO1 to the frequency of LFO2. Find a good starting point here for the frequency. That's okay. Now let's go to the effects section and enable a compressor. We can turn down the lows and the highs a bit too. Enable an EQ. Essentially, we're just turning down the volume here. So I want to give this a bit more bite, so let's just activate oscillator 2 as well. Set LFO2 to the level of this, pitch this up. So maybe increase the unison here. That's fine for now. Again, duplicate this, go back to our initialized preset, and now we're going to create a riser. We're going to use LFO1 to modulate pretty much everything. So let's just set this to envelope mode. The length is 2 bars. Let's start with the global pitch. Maybe start with a setting around here. And I would already activate all 3 oscillators. So I'm pitching oscillator 1 2 octaves higher and oscillator 3 1 octave lower. Now I want them to increase volume as well. Put LFO1 on the level of all oscillators. And I want oscillator 2 to be the dominant one. So I'm going to give this one some volume right away. Now let's just play around with the unison. Go to the effects section, enable the compressor, play around with the bands here. Let's use some distortion and add LFO1 to the drive. Now add some EQ and use either a high shelf or a high cut. Add LFO1 to the cutoff. Use a filter as well. We can also add some reverb. So we are going to start at the 100% mix and decrease it over time. We can also increase the size here. Now let's just duplicate this. So now that we have the copy of our first riser, we're just going to create a higher pitched version of this. So let's just increase the pitch on all the oscillators. Decrease the level of the white noise. And leave it like this. And now what I also want is some sort of atmosphere in the background. So let's just start from scratch again. And I'm just gonna heavily detune these oscillators here and make sure the filter is engaged. A lot of reverb. Maybe a bit of rising pitch, LFO1 to global voice transpose, and use very moderate settings here. Set LFO1 to envelope mode, 2 bars, maybe add some white noise, pitch oscillator 2 up 1 octave, and actually add another oscillator and pitch this one up 2 octaves, detune this one as well. So everything together sounds like this. Let's add our Whoosh Hit. Let's put all of this together in a group. I don't like the tail at this end, so I'm going to use the utility plugin to decrease the volume here. And now we can do some basic mixing. Add an EQ to the sound here. So I don't want this low rumble here. Since we have a downer playing throughout the entire thing, we're gonna cut the lows on everything else. And on our atmosphere. Actually, maybe go back and give this one a bit more high frequencies. Everything together now. At the beginning of the sound, I want to give the downer and this really high-pitched riser a bit more space. So I'm gonna group all of the other sounds together besides the hit. And I'm gonna use an EQ to automate a high pass here. See how this sounds. At the same time, I don't want the downer to be that prominent at the end. So I'm gonna automate a high pass here as well. Let's see how this sounds together with everything else. So I'm just gonna decrease the volume in some of the elements. The downer is a bit too loud for me. This entire group and this individual sound can be a bit quieter as well. And I've actually decided to make this setting here a bit more extreme. And I think I'm also gonna drag this atmosphere sound out of the group. So now with the volume of the hit increased a bit as well. Now we can also do some processing for this entire group. Let's add an EQ and a compressor and a limiter at the end. Compress everything a bit, cut some of the mids, and maybe push it a bit into the limiter. And you can easily make different versions of this sound. So I created an alternative version of this where I changed the downer and I cut more of the high end and I changed the frequency of LFO2. So it sounds like this. And I also took the main riser and pitched it down 1 octave. I also changed the voice transpose amount here. And for the second riser, I deactivated the third oscillator and increased the detune settings here. Now it sounds like this.